All right, let's go ahead and get kicked off today. To start, I'll just say thank you to everyone here for joining today's webinar. We are excited to give some updates on some of the new and upcoming features coming to both Sage Intacct and our Baker Tilly Home Services products. Do some quick introductions to start off. Tim, if you want to, yeah. So I'm Drew Kangiser. I'm the Director of Product Management here at Baker Tilly. Been working with Sage Intacct for a long time now. My current role, I oversee all of our Sage Intacct products and manage a team of product managers who are managing those products, adding nice new features that are ultimately intended to help each of you. We're going to be hearing from Jody Adi on the call today. She's a senior consultant on our implementation team. She'll be going through some of these nice new features in detail, as well as Tim Cook, who is the product manager on our team directly responsible for our home services module, our supplier statement module, and other products as well. So as we go through the presentation, we're going to be talking about our latest release from last month on our home and commercial services module, walking you through those enhancements. We'll give an update on our supplier statement module, some of the new releases and features we've added there, as well as where we're taking that product in the future. Sage Intacct's release just went out last Friday, so we'll also hit on some of those key enhancements that might help you out in your day-to-day as well. And then we'll do some, leave time at the end for some questions. I will say along the way as we go through this, if you do have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. We'll be monitoring that and can address it as they come up. All right. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jody.
Hi, everyone. I hope you are doing well today. I'm going to talk about and demo the new features just released in the Home and Commercial Services module. Let me share my screen. These are the vendor merge, the updated payment search, user restriction report, and the new deposit import. Let's start with the vendor merge. All right. As you probably know, Sage Intacct does not have the capability natively to merge customers or vendors, but many of you who have been using the Home Services module know that our development team here at Baker Tilly created a customer merge option, which has been wonderful. Now we have the very much anticipated vendor merge. The vendor merge is similar to the customer merge with only a few small differences you may notice. First, let's decide which vendor we'll be merging from. All right, so in this case, we're going to merge everything to this 90 right here. So we're going to select the merge from, and then we're going to select merge to. Something to note is the date override, which is optional. If you leave this blank, the adjustments that will occur to merge these vendors will post on the first open date available. This could affect your vendor aging as the new transaction created with this merge will be dated differently than the original date of the transaction. If you need the date to be the original date to keep the integrity of the vendor aging report, make sure the books are open and use this date override field. We're going to leave it as is and we're going to validate. Once validated, you'll see the number of transactions that will be merged and their balances. From the clearing account dropdown, choose the GL account you would like to post adjustments to. This creates an in and out of this account that will net to 0. You can set up a separate bank account as a clearing bank account, or you can use an existing bank account. We're going to process the merge. When complete, you'll see a message that will indicate that it was successful. We're going to give it a second. And another second. All right, so the merge is complete. We're going to merge one more vendor. So we're going to choose the third one. and we're going to merge that one as well. I'm going to validate, and I'm going to process. If you're familiar with the customer merge, you'll recognize the final result of this merge, which let's let this one merge, and I'm going to show you the final result. All right, so we're going to show right here the result of this merge. The old vendors become children of the new vendor. In this case, 2 vendors are now children. The old vendors are also marked with the word merged. With the customer merge, the customer is immediately marked inactive. For the vendor merge, it is a little different. Overnight, these child vendors will be marked inactive and will disappear from your active vendor list. So this is the vendor merge feature. If anyone has any questions at all, please feel free to put them in the chat. Now let's look at the updated payment search. Many of you are familiar with this, but there has been a significant change. Up until now, you have had to have the exact customer ID, the exact date of the payment, and the exact amount in order to return a result. With this new release, you will receive results without having to enter all 3. So let's look at some scenarios. I'm going to search for a customer. We'll choose this customer. We're going to not include a date, but we are going to include an amount. So if we search, it's going to show that the payment exists. Great. And the payment status is undeposited. We're going to try a customer and a date, but no amount this time. In this case, it's going to bring up every transaction for that customer that happened on that date. And then you can select which one. So now let's look at customer, no date, and no amount. This returns everything for that customer. Well, actually, it's the 10 most recent payments. Lastly, let's look at no customer, but we're going to have a date and we're going to have an amount. In this case, 2 customers have that amount on that date. So then we could select. Remember, when you select these payments, the search returns the transaction type and the record, but also a payment status. Don't forget that you can check the help files in the Home Services module to find the meaning and the resolution of these statuses if necessary. And those are located right here. So if anyone has any questions regarding the updated payment search, again, please feel free to put them in the chat. Next up, let's look
Real
at
quick,
the,
I'll
yes.
just say we did get a couple of questions on the vendor merge and its availability. So that feature, along with the payment search and some of the ones that we are going to continue talking about, were all released in our last Home Services module release. If you are using that module, you should have access to it. If you don't see the option, you may need to look at getting your permissions adjusted to have access to the vendor merge, the payment search, and some of these new features. We also got on the timing of inactivating the old vendors. Tim answered that one as well. They will be marked inactive on a daily basis after being merged.
All right, great. Keep with the questions, definitely. Next up, we're going to look at creating a user restriction report. The report is an overview of your users and what entity restrictions they have, as well as what permission roles that they have been assigned. You must be at the top level to use this. You can filter by active, inactive, or all. In this case, we're going to choose all, and you simply generate the user restriction report. This will go to your email. So I have right here. This is an Excel spreadsheet, which is great because you can simply filter I know that this is a small report, but some of you will find this extremely helpful because you have hundreds of users. So basically, you can filter however you need. In this case, we're going to filter just the admin user. All right. I'd like to point out the deactivation column. This is new and it tracks the date where the users were deactivated or locked out. Soon we're going to add an email column that can be used to create email distribution lists based on a role assignment. For instance, if you need emails to go out to only those with admin permissions, you'll be able to easily pull this list based on this filtering. And that's pretty much it for the user restriction report. Again, feel free to put any questions in the chat. All right. Lastly, let's look at, actually, I want to show here first. Let's discuss the new deposit import. Some of you have been making use of the uploading payment statements from ServiceTitan to automatically select payments for deposit. The new deposit import makes this process even easier as you can import deposits for multiple entities at top level. Make sure you're at top level. You're going to take your usual report and you're going to add these two rows. You need to add an entity and potentially a location, the bank account, the full deposit amount, the currency, the deposit description, and a deposit date. Down here are your payments that make up that deposit. All right. So you will then drag and drop, really easy. Oh, save as a CSV. You'll drag and drop, and then you're going to process. If there are any errors, you're going to receive an error report by email. Let's give this a second and let's check the result of the deposit. So we're going to go over here. And now at entity level, you're going to be able to see that the deposit has indeed come through when it wants to do this for us. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time. All right, so that top one, that was the deposit date of 11/10. So you can only imagine doing this multiple entities at a time at top level, your deposits were created. If you have any questions on that, let us know, drop it in the chat. Also, just a reminder, in the home services module, again, we have the module help right here. And all of the topics related to the home and commercial services module are in here. And that's it. Is it time for a poll question?
Real quick, before we launch the poll, we'll just say that we did get another couple of questions in the chat. One related to the merge vendor functionality and what level you should be at for that. Do you want to take that one, Tim?
Yes. The vendor merge works on the transactions within the entity that you are using it. So if you want to merge transactions within, a sub entity, you need to be there. But if you're working on transactions at the top level, you would run the tool at top level.
Great. There was also a question. Is there any plan to enhance the speed in which Intacct processes transactions? The way that our product works is that we are somewhat constrained to the Sage Intacct response times, but beyond that, we are constantly working to improve speed of these processes. And with every release we make, that is an area that we always are focused on, especially for higher volume customers. So it is something that we've continued to prioritize and focus on to make it work as fast and smoothly as possible, and we'll continue focusing on as well. And we actually have one more question that just came in. Is there a, oh, well, real quick, let's do the poll first.
All right, poll question number 1. How do you see your business outlook for the home services industry in 2025? On a roll, improving slightly, might decline slightly, or about the same?
All right. While people are filling that out, we can go through the last couple of questions, which are good ones, around the deposit import. So the first is there a downloadable template for the deposit upload to make sure the deposit goes through smoothly?
The template is the same as the CSV file used on the new deposit screen, except you're adding the top 2 rows related to the deposit information itself. So I believe we provide that information in the help section, but there's not a whole lot of data there to actually use a template for that specification. If you have any trouble, just reach out to us and we'll help you with that.
Yeah, and I'll just add that with this being a newer feature that clients aren't required to use to continue using the product. As you start using it, if you have feedback, if you run into issues, please reach out to our support team. This is an area where we want to get that feedback early on. So if there are any challenges, we can continue to add functionality and make that as smooth as possible. There's also another question around if we don't transact at the top level, are we still able to use the deposit upload function and provide the entity we're transacting at?
That's a big yes. That's one of the best features about the deposit import function is to be able to specify the entity that you are processing the deposit at, but you can still import it at the top level.
All right, great. I think that addresses all the questions. Let's go ahead and close the poll if we haven't already, and we can continue moving along.
Great. Hello, everyone. Now that we've seen the changes included with the recent upgrade now in place, we will continue to introduce new improvements to this new release throughout the year. I have selected 4 backlog items for discussion on this call. We aim to release the first improvement later this month, which is cached values for the monthly summary analysis. We will also discuss expanded refund transaction types, automated write-offs, and additional speed and efficiency improvements. The first improvement focuses on the monthly summary analysis within the Reconciliation Manager. Although we enable you to currently pull GL and aging balances for multiple months at once, the wait time for aging balances has limited the tool's usability for many users with high volumes. To address this, we plan to implement a nightly data refresh. For those actively using this tool, we'll cache these balances overnight, allowing you to access preloaded values when running the monthly account summary. You will know if you are working with the cached values if you see the statement advising you of that at the bottom of the screen. The cached values will still reflect any variance changes from month to month as they typically wouldn't differ from prior day balances. This enhancement will enable quicker troubleshooting of reconciliations, and you'll always have the option to refresh the cached values by clicking the link at the bottom of the screen. Additionally, we plan to enhance this feature by displaying the last reconciled months. This will allow you to see where you left off and identify if any postings were made before the last reconciliation, potentially requiring adjustments to prior months. An example of this can be seen in the dates displayed in the top right corner. Moving to the next backlog item, let's dive into refund tracking improvements. Currently, as shown on the configuration screen, you need to specify 3 different accounts for coding refund transactions. We are exploring ways to make this setup more flexible by allowing up to 4 account options and enabling custom names for each refund transaction type. Additionally, we're considering adding a collection tracking flag to certain transaction types. This flag would help you follow up on specific refunds to ensure secondary collection efforts are completed. With this flag, we could present an active collection list, allowing you to monitor collection issues and update the flag as needed. Transactions would also have that collection flag removed automatically once the customer's balance is fully collected. The next backlog item introduces a new method to help keep your AR aging organized. Last year, we launched the AR Subledger Automation tool to automatically apply open credits to debits within your AR subledger, simplifying AR aging cleanup. Now, we're looking to develop an additional tool to address minor open balances that are not cost-effective to pursue. This tool will assess open AR transactions against a user-defined threshold for dollar amount and aging, identifying potential adjustments to post to customer accounts. Based on this assessment, we can both generate a report to help you post these adjustments in your third-party billing software or automatically generate the adjustments within Intacct to clear the transactions. Lastly, we are continuously exploring ways to enhance the speed and efficiency of the Home Services module. We are optimizing certain processes by reducing the number of API calls required for various tasks. And with our new infrastructure in this release, we plan to cache non-dynamic data that doesn't need to refresh with each process. For instance, the list of bank account options for a new deposit rarely changes, so caching this data can make the deposit process significantly faster. In addition to performance improvements through our new infrastructure, we also plan to utilize the deposit import capability in this new release to streamline your workflow within the module. The new deposit process may include an option to queue the deposit rather than processing it immediately. This would be especially beneficial during times when multiple users are completing deposits simultaneously. We would also like to expand this tool by allowing you to load and edit an incomplete queue deposit with the option to requeue or process it as needed. These are a few of the backlog items we aim to address, with several more ideas currently in design. But we welcome any suggestions on how to make the Home Commercial Services module even more useful for you. Please feel free to email us with your ideas and feedback. Speaking of feedback, we have arrived at another poll question. All right, the question is, Baker Tilly has launched a new advanced approvals product for Sage Intacct. Are you interested in learning more about this product and how our home services customers are using it today? A simple yes, no will do. Thank you. Okay, everybody get their poll response in? Thank you for your responses. At this time of the webinar, I would like to review our supplier statement module and some of the improvements we made since we originally debuted it in May. As you may recall, the supplier statement module is designed to save you time and address key challenges in managing payments to high volume vendors. We're developing a suite of tools to enable you to use your vendor's list of bills and credits to automate your accounts payable processes, enhancing both efficiency and accuracy. The current features include automating the conversion of purchasing receiver transactions into vendor bills, automating the selection of bills and credits for payment, and now providing payment details in a format that's easily accessible to your vendors. At this time, I'm going to switch over to demo. Briefly, the supplier statement module is accessed with the menu shown. Going down the menu, you have the option to set purchasing conversion thresholds for pricing variances by dollar and percentage. You have two methods of converting receivers, by dashboard and by file import, and you can review the conversion queue to see the status of the conversions. The remaining menu items access the payment automation tool to import payment details, and the options and manual vendor remittance generator for our new remittance feature. Like the Home Services module, you can access our help documentation on the last menu item. In the supplier statement module, you have two methods to convert receivers to vendor bills. The first method is by utilizing this dashboard. Here you specify the conversion action you would like to complete, which is from receiver to vendor invoice. The remaining fields allow you to filter the transaction list to choose from. In this example, I have specified the vendor Johnstone Supply as my filter. By selecting Preview Transactions, it will display the list of receivers eligible to convert. Simply select the ones you would like to convert, specify the optional document number and amount, and select Submit for conversion at the bottom of the screen. You also have the option of overriding the transaction date, GL date, and due date of the vendor invoices it will create. As an alternative, we could upload a file on this import screen that incorporates all the same data. We have a template available to download, but the data required would look like this example, containing all the similar data to match the receiver transaction, as well as specify the conversion parameters. After initiating the dashboard process or uploading a file, you will receive an email with the conversion results. You can also see the excuse me. You can also see the conversion queue to see the results. You will note we have one failure where the pricing difference exceeded the allowed variance parameters that are available to be configured. You may see that that conversion amount did not cover the full receiver amount. For this receiver, I realized a partial conversion was necessary since the bill covered about half of what was received. This log will help me track the few receivers that need manual conversion. Although the initial partial conversion was manual, we've now added the functionality to complete the conversion of a partially converted receiver. So if you look at the receiver transactions, you'll see that normally we would see the receivers in the pending status. But if you have a partially converted one, it has a partially converted state. So going back to our dashboard option, we have this option here where we can include the partially converted receivers in our selection list and to be able to convert them. And of course, we can convert them with the import process as well. Moving on to the payment automation feature, this import allows you to specify the bank account and payment method, as well as whether you are recording the payment or setting them as draft to be paid out of Intacct. You also have the option to auto-apply any credits available on the vendor. As an example, I have used a sheet to take a vendor statement from Johnstone Supply and grab the individual transaction data, and then use consistent data options such as the payment date, the vendor ID, and add that information to include in the information that I would import using as this tool. I can do the same thing using a listing I generated from Intacct of bills I want to pay across multiple vendors. Here's an example of data that I pulled from a custom report out of Intacct, and then mainly the consistent data here is just the payment date. I can take this information, decide which ones I want to convert, and produce it in the same import file for the payment automation tool. This can be done across multiple vendors. What's new is the payment automation import allows you, since our demo of this feature in May, we have added the ability to specify the entity on the payment. You can specify it here for all payments to use the same entity, or it can be specified within the import file. This will allow you to create payment requests for any entity from the top level, giving you the opportunity to manage AP processes across multiple entities without sliding into each entity. As a third tool to this module, we have added a remittance statement feature to replace the limited remittance emails sent out by Intacct. The remittance statements produced are similar to Intacct's ACH remittance, but with several improvements. Number one, the remittance details are communicated in Excel format instead of PDF, allowing your vendors to utilize the data to accurately apply your payment to their outstanding transactions. A remittance will now be sent even for $0 payments when credits have been applied to bills with no remaining cash due. Currently, Intacct does not send these remittances, which means your vendor is unaware of which credits were applied to which bills in such cases. These remittances can be sent to vendors receiving check payments in addition to the ACH, and they allow the ability of additional detail provided on the remittance from the bill detail reference or comments. On this screen, you can see all the configurations currently available for the remittance statement feature. Each entity is enabled and configured separately. 3 email addresses are specified: the contact email address listed on the email, the reply to address for vendor responses, and a BCC email to capture all communications sent to the vendor. This also gives you some customization options on the remittance detail, such as whether to include the discount and description columns. And as mentioned earlier, you can specify what additional bill detail information you would like to include and how you want that column labeled and displayed. In this example, I would display the project name for each bill item that is coded to a project. Besides sending these on a daily basis, we have a tool to send all remittances for a specific vendor over a period of time. To request remittance statements for a particular vendor, you can access the vendor remittance statement screen, select a vendor from the drop-down search field, and specify a date range and run it. By selecting the option at the bottom, the remittance emails will go directly to the vendor, but left unchecked, the emails will be delivered to you first so you can review the results and forward to the vendor directly. Now going back to the PowerPoint, you will see an example email generated by the tool. We are starting with a form very similar to Intacct's standard remittance email, but hope to allow even further customization by entity soon. All the basic information for the payment is shown with the attached spreadsheet. Opening the sheet, you will see the list of bills, negative bills, adjustments, and even vendor advances if they are included in the payment. Although I did not have projects associated with this payment, you will see where the custom column for the bill detail information would appear. In Q1, we'll be releasing the overall tool to manage and match vendor statements or transaction listings, enabling you to reconcile these vendor lists to Intacct transactions, automate conversions and payment creation, generate reports, etc. This feature will tie the module together in an overall vendor statement management process. In summary, our recent changes include converting partially converted receiver transactions now with the purchasing conversion tool. We can allow the entity to be specified with the payment automation tool, allowing more flexibility in AP management without switching between the various entities. We've added the payment remittance tool to address some of the pain points with the current remittance capability, and soon we will release our vendor transaction matching tool to assist with the whole reconciliation process. I went through this really quickly due to our time constraints, but please contact us about a further demonstration of this module and find out how it can help save time within your current processes. And now we are at polling question 3. Which of these new product features are you most excited about? Vendor merge and home services, reconciliation manager improved performance via the caching, automated vendor remittance statements in the supplier statement module, and deposit import. We should have added an option to select all of the above. That's what a product manager would probably say, huh? Moving on. For this final section of today's webinar, we will be going back to Jody to highlight some of the recent changes that you would find, recent changes by Intacct that you would find useful.
Okay, the latest release from Sage Intacct occurred this month. While we encourage you to look over the entire release, I'm going to point out a few areas of interest. Next slide. There you go. This is one of my favorites. It's such a simple thing, but of great importance. Now you can easily find your customer ID. You no longer have to hunt through your old emails for your Sage Intacct customer ID. This is the ID that you use to sign into the Intacct community or Sage University. It is now located on the company information page within the setup for your convenience. Next slide. In accounts payable, you can now send automatic vendor payment notifications to more recipients. You're no longer limited to sending only to the vendor's primary email address. You can now send automatic notifications to a secondary email address as well. In the accounts payable configuration, there is an enable functionality section where you can select include secondary email contacts in automatic payment notifications. A few things to note. If the pay to contact is set up as same as vendor, Intacct uses the primary and secondary email addresses. No error is generated if you do not have a secondary email address set up. If you are viewing a posted payment and are sending a notification email, it will send to the primary email address only. Next slide. With the vendor reconciliation report, you can easily see how payments and applied credits match to bills. At a glance, you can see not only how much you owe a vendor, but also how payments and credits were matched to bills. The vendor reconciliation report answers the following types of questions. Which credits and payments were applied to a given bill? Where was a given credit applied? Which transactions share a specified match sequence? What transactions remain partially matched or not matched at all? Next slide. Also in accounts payable, there are pay bill enhancements. If you are looking for higher capacity bill processing and easier ways to drill down to credits and the ability to sort and filter columns, the latest enhancements to pay bills offer these improvements to early adopters. These enhancements are useful if you do any of the following. Regularly process over 1,000 bills to a single vendor and merge payments in the outbox to combine them. Selectively apply vendor credits to payments, searching through many available credits, or if you want to refine the list of bills to pay on the fly. Next slide. Looking at this a little more closely, in the Apply Credit screen, you can sort and filter the lists of credits by credit type, reference number, line number, credit date, account, department, location, and reference bill number. In the bill details screen, you can filter by account, department, location, currency, amount due, credits available, credits to apply, discounts, and amount to pay. Personally, I think this is a pretty nice change that I have had several customers looking for. All right, next slide. Looking now toward accounts receivable, the customer reconciliation report allows you to easily see how payments and applied credits match to invoices. At a glance, you can see not only how much a customer owes, but also how payments and credits were matched to invoices. The customer reconciliation report answers the following types of questions: which credits and payments were applied to a given invoice? Where was a given credit applied? Which transactions share specified match sequence? What transactions remain partially matched or not matched at all? Next slide. There are enhancements to accounts receivable statements. Remove the need for customers to perform manual calculations by adding a running balance to your custom statement templates. Currency symbols now display alongside amounts by default. Add a running balance to your existing custom templates using a specified merge field shown here. One note, the running balance for accounts receivable statements is supported in printed documents only. Next slide. Don't forget to check for new permissions within these modules if you're looking for the changes with this release. As an example, for the new customer and vendor reconciliation reports, you must update the permissions within your roles so that these reports may be generated and used by your team. Again, those are just a few of the highlights from Intact's 4th release of 2024. The next release is in February of 2025. That's all I have today.
So we had a couple of questions come through in the chat. One of them I answered. So related to the supplier statement module, there was a questions on how that enhancement, how that application works if you're using a third-party payment service that actually sends, files to the bank to cut checks. I would say that what we do is we try to really, from a payment perspective, automate the payment selection process so that you're not having to go in and click on each credit, click on each bill, but rather can manage and import for that payment selection process. Now, the process to actually initiate those payments from Intacct, we certainly do have customers that are using this product, but then using a third party, maybe it's the bank itself, where an integration basically picks up from our selection process and pushes the file to the bank to actually cut the checks or send an electronic payment. So that solution is certainly viable. We also had a question, I think, related to the pay bills on how to become an early adopter. Do you know the answer to that, Jody?
I do not. I'll try to find that.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll look for an answer there to make sure we can share it back, but we do have some time left, so did want to open it up in case anyone has any other questions. So I see one more in the chat. So for matching AP receivers, would we no longer use purchasing and now use home services? So within our supplier statement module, which is technically a different product from our home services module, what we provide is functionality to convert those receivers to invoices in mass. So really, rather than having your team go through to each receiver and match that using the manual conversion process within Intacct, now you would have access to our supplier statement module, which would give you both the user interface to do that conversion of multiple transactions at a time, or what we've seen a little more frequently, which is the ability to take a file and load that to trigger all the conversions of a large number of receivers to invoice. You would still have the purchasing module. You would just use this tool to automate the conversion process.
I went ahead and I put the link. There's a survey to become an early adopter. The link is in the chat.
There's a follow-up, I think. So can you take 3 receivers and convert that to 1 invoice? We can't support that specific use case today. In this example, we are still looking at only 1 receiver being converted to an invoice, not the ability to combine multiple receivers for 1 invoice. You could have 1 receiver that creates multiple different invoices potentially, but it wouldn't be a many to one. And there's also a question on, if we have additional questions, who should we reach out to? Best case scenario for all this is still just to reach out to our customer support team. And I believe that's Sage Intacct support at bakertilly.com. We work very heavily with our support team. Oftentimes, the cases you submit certainly come right back to this team, but to Tim and I to collaborate with that team. So I would reach out to them, and if there's anything that requires our team's help, they'll loop us in to get involved there. And I just put that email address in the chat.
I would like to add, feel free to just use that email address for any suggestions you have as well. It doesn't have to be a problem. And it'll be routed to the right place.
All right. Any other final questions for today? All right. Well, we really appreciate each of you for making the time to join us today. We really hope that you get some value out of these new features. And like we've said, if you have feedback, positive or negative, please feel free to share with us, with your CSM, with the support team. And yeah, with that, we'll go ahead and end today's webinar, and we'll be doing another one of these in early 2025. Thanks, everyone.